So we're going to talk about distributed Agile teams today, and one of the things I'm going to try to do is to make it interactive. So I'm going to do a couple of polls throughout. If you go to Slido now, you won't see anything, so I have to activate the poll, but we are going to make it a bit of interactive. And we'll start with, you are all obviously Agile practitioners, and many of you have to work with distributed teams. So I'm not here to argue whether or not remote is better or not. I'm here because many of us have to work with distributed teams, and when we have to, then what? So the argument of remote or not, it's up to each individual team, but since you have to work remote, then what? And Angel said, oh yeah, the Agile Manifesto, there's nothing outdated about it, and I have to say there I disagree, because in the Agile Manifesto it says we have to be face-to-face. And I'm going to argue whether we can be e-face to e-face. So we'll see how that goes today. And I know it was written in 2001, and I want to just go back to 2001, see what else was happening during that time. The iPod was released, and that was pretty cool at the time. Windows XP came out in 2001. And Wikipedia was started in 2001. So a lot has happened since then, I would say. And I know that in the past, remote communication has been notoriously bad. I mean, if a lot of you might remember the old spider phone, those conference room phones that sit in the middle of the table where you have to lean over and, hey, Bob, it's Lisette, can you hear me? And I would say some things are still notoriously bad. And I'm talking Skype for Business here. So I hate Skype for Business. I saw they were a sponsor, so I'm really sorry. But they are a sponsor, and this is going to take us to our first poll, which is, we're going to go to Slido. Let me activate the poll. And you're going to choose between, I still use a spider phone. That's one of those conference rooms things. Some of the younger people might be going, what's a spider phone? And if you use Skype for Business and you love it, I would like to know. And if you do not love it, I would also like to know. So let's go to the first poll here. And I'll activate it. So it should be slido.com, and the code is 9311. And the internet is not where I knew doing something with internet would be tough. It's working? Okay, here we go. We can watch the results come in. I'm not surprised. A few young ones here. Ooh, some daring Skype for Business lovers. The sponsor's in the room, I think. 70%. It's usually 80%. We still have some spider phone users. I think the results are starting to become clear. A lot of us are using Skype for Business because it's part of Microsoft Teams. I'm not against Microsoft Teams, think it's a great product. I am totally against Skype for Business. If we want to have good communication on Teams, we need to use a real tool, and Skype for Business, unfortunately, is not that tool. Okay, we've got 60%. Spider phones, a lot of spider phones. I hope to show you some alternatives today. All right, I'll leave that up. We'll go back. Not only has a lot happened since the Agile Manifesto, but a lot has happened with technology in the last 5 years. And I think it's time for companies to take another look. So first, before we go into how, I want to give you proof that it's possible with just a couple of stories from the interviews that I've done. The first one is one of my favorite stories. This is of the Hyperloop team. And Elon Musk with SpaceX a couple of years ago decided to have a competition to see who could build the Hyperloop, which is a super fast transportation system that can take a commute of 7 hours and put it into 30 minutes. So you basically are getting shot through this gravity tube. Now there is a guy on Reddit, on a subforum of Reddit, who just put out, say, hey, I'm really interested in joining this competition. Is there anybody that else is that interested in joining with me? 1 year later, with a team of over 400 remote volunteers from all over the world, they came in finalists in the competition, and they hadn't met before. So yes, it is possible to work remotely successfully. Another example, I see a hand going, oh, I see, it's not for me. So another example, this is an Agile coach and from the United States. This is Jeffrey Hesse. He works for Sonatype. They have a 100% remote team, and he decided to run an experiment. Jesse is an avid climber, and he decided, I'm going to go to Argentina for a month, and I'm going to see if my team notices that I'm traveling and climbing while working. And he said that it was really difficult because the internet in Argentina isn't great. And it was good that he had technical skills because he had to rig a few systems together to make it work. But he did manage to go 1 full month of traveling and climbing without his team noticing that he was gone. And he's an Agile coach. So also it is possible. If you want to see some of the other interviews that I've done, here's a link to the podcast. I'm sorry about the screen resolution. There's something wrong with the slides. It's better if you sit in the back, just so you know. But this is the link to all the interviews. They're on YouTube and they're on the podcast. You can see them all for free. And of course, I just published my book last month, so I'm still super excited about it. So here's where you can publish the book. 410 pages of lots of remote tips. The one thing that I've learned from doing all the interviews is there's no one right way to get remote working right. It's a series of just a whole bunch of little things that you have to try and massage on your team. And I wish there were a silver bullet because it would make me a lot more money than it is now. But it really is a whole bunch of little things that you have to try. So there's 3 components to it. One is make communicating easy. And I think that Angel was spot on in his talk this morning, which is you got to talk to each other. And when we're remote, it's especially hard. So we're going to make communicating easy. We have to define what normal behavior is on our team, and we have to work out loud and make our work visible to our teammates. So let's start with making communicating easy. And what I mean by that is I mean Star Trek easy. So you know on Star Trek they have these little communicators on their chest, and the captain hits it and he goes, Picard to Riker, and Riker responds from anywhere on the ship. That's the kind of easy communication that I'm talking about. And the first thing, this is one of my favorite quotes, people think that they want to be co-located, but what we really want is high bandwidth communication. We want to be able to talk to our colleagues as if they're sitting next to us, and I think that's absolutely possible. The first thing we need for that, though, is we need super fast internet. If you don't have fast internet, you're doomed. That's sort of rule number 1 with remote working. You really have to have super fast internet. And I mean at least 10 megabytes per second, which doesn't sound like a lot, but there's a lot of places that don't have that. The next is you have to use good equipment. So throw those, if you're still using spider phones, if you're still using Skype for Business, you got to throw them out. It's time to throw them out. They're just not good enough. And here's some examples of good systems. This is something called Telepresence, just a series of monitors, but what you can see is that it simulates what it's like to sit across the table from each other. I mean, this is a super fancy system, very expensive. There are other things that are less expensive, like Meeting Owl. Meeting Owl is just a super cute microphone that looks like an owl, sits in the middle of the table. It's got a 360-degree microphone and camera that focuses on the person who's speaking automatically. So not super expensive, like Telepresence does the job. Way better than the spider phone. And the next thing is we got to use video. And I know people hate using video, but we are programmed as humans to visually connect with each other. And when you're going, hey, Bob, it's Lisette, can you hear me? You're not connecting with the other person on the line. I mean, who here has watched a webinar without multitasking? Right? Whoa. So there's one. So one focused person. So we really need to use video. And that brings us to our next poll. Why do you not use video? And we'll talk about that in a second. So let me go and activate the poll. Are you shy? You do use video, great. There's distracting things. You want to multitask. You're in your yoga clothes or your pajamas. Those are some of the things. Let's see what people are doing. Lots of video users, great. Totally advanced. Great, way ahead of the game. You want to multitask, I can understand, but when we're meeting, we are meeting for a reason, and if you shouldn't be at the meeting, then you shouldn't be at the meeting. And for those of us who are still in our pajamas, that is a great perk of working remotely, of course. Just put on a top and keep your pajama bottoms on, that's totally fine, just don't stand up. Totally good to do it. So I know a lot of people, I'm glad this audience likes to use video. That's different. So if you're going to use video, though, you want to have good lighting. So if you're sitting in front of a window and you've got that witness protection program thing going on, there are solutions to that. You definitely want to have good lighting, because science shows that when we're better lit on video, that it's a more engaging conversation. Now, you can invest in expensive systems, of course, but there's also things you can put the chat light here. It just sits on the back of your laptop, and you turn on the light, and you have instant lighting anywhere you go. There's also much sillier things. This is a selfie light, so that you can put it on your selfie, and from anywhere you go, you can take awesome selfies. I know it looks funny. It came out of Japan. But good lighting's pretty easy to get to. The other thing is we need to pay attention to sound quality. So if you're calling in from the car, if you've got a barking dog, I had a colleague once who had a bird cage next to her workstation. So it's cute at first, but it quickly gets in the way of a productive conversation. And we want Picard to Riker. Those are the kind of conversations that we want. Okay, so that's making communicating easy, and that's super important. The next thing we want to do is define what normal behavior is on our team. And this is also where the cultural component comes into this. We're working across cultures, and I think culture is just defining what normal behavior is. And the way that we do that is we create team agreements, and we just define what normal behavior is on our team. What's the information that we need to share? How are we going to communicate with each other? Is it Slack? Is it email? Is it WhatsApp? How do we know what each other are doing? Defining those things on your team goes a long way to avoiding miscommunications, especially with different cultures. So I usually do a team agreement session with every team that I do. It takes about 90 minutes to go through. We create, it's called a living document, because you need to update it about every 3 months. But once you've defined those things, everybody's on the same page, and that goes a long way. And the last thing that we want to do, and one of the more interesting components of this, is we want to work out loud. We want to make our work observable to others in a way that's meaningful. That doesn't mean we're spamming people all day with what we're doing. It means we're showing people what we're doing. Now, as software developers, that's pretty easy. You can see what kind of code people are committing, but there's also lots of other ways to do that. One, of course, your daily stand-ups, just basically updating each other when that's necessary with what's going on. There are all kinds of tools. This is one of my favorites. It's called I Done This. It's a Facebook-style news feed that allows you to just see what people are working on. You can like things, you can comment on things, but there's a million tools for this kind of thing. And just so that you know, I don't get any money or anything from any of these tools. I'm just a slavish fan, so I'm just showing it off. And for every tool I show, there's 100 competitors. A lot of offices are actually setting up webcams. So if you've got teams that are working in different places from each other, you can set up a webcam so that you can see each other. And one of the teams that's done this has actually developed a sign language between their teams. So they have like a signal for good morning, and a signal for I'm going to lunch, and a signal for goodbye. But again, just being able to see each other really helps create connection and camaraderie on the team. Now we're going to get a little bit more far out starting here. This is one of my very favorite tools. It's called Sococo. And what you're doing is you're looking down into a floor plan of an office. And each one of these boxes represents a separate office. Each one of the circles represents a person in that office. Now you can only see and hear the people that are in the same office as you, but you just have to double click to get to another office. Just being able to see where our virtual employees are really creates a sense of presence and the camaraderie on the team. And you no longer have to say like, hey, do you want to schedule a meeting for next week at 2 o'clock? You can simply now knock on somebody's virtual door. I run a virtual co-working group in this in this tool, and it's just people from all over the world, random freelancers who get together and work together, and we hang out by the virtual water cooler, and we talk, and we also focus on our work together. Now we'll go a little bit further out. I'd like to introduce you to Telepresence. This is called the Kubi. I've actually got one here today. So what this allows me to do is beam in, just like on Skype. But now I can move myself using the arrow keys on my keyboard. So I can actually sit at a table with other people that are in person, and I can move myself from left to right to see who's talking. You can also nod your head up and down. You can nod your head no. And what's cool about this is when you're beaming in, you can actually feel that somebody's talking on your right or talking on your left. And for the people in the room, this movement actually creates more of a human presence. So that's really fun. And it opens up a whole new form of office humor, of course. You've got bow ties and all kinds of wigs, all kinds of things. So that's cool. Facebook has actually just come out with Facebook Portal, or it's coming out. Same thing as the Kubi, except the device doesn't move, the camera just moves. So the camera follows the person around. So pros and cons to each tool, just depends on what you're looking for. Now, Beam Pro has created the drivable version of the Kubi. So it's about person height, and you beam in, and you just drive the thing using the arrow keys on your keyboard. And if you have an office with lots of stairs or elevators or a pool, then there's definitely problems with that. But at the Suitable Technology office, 50% of the people are there in the flesh, and 50% of the people are there in the robot. And they work together every day like this. And if you're wondering how you say hello to people in robots, you can't shake hands, of course. We have to do something a little more 2D. We fist bump. So that's fun. And of course, there's virtual reality. Now, most of us are still struggling with the basic spider phones and old conference room equipment, but virtual reality is coming up. This is Roomy. It's virtual reality for remote teams. Team members actually put on their goggles, and they walk into their virtual office, they walk down the hall, they go to their virtual conference room, and they stand around their virtual whiteboard and they meet. Now, holograms are just around the corner. And in fact, they've been around for a while. This is Tupac performing at 2012 in Coachella. And actually, I want to show you a minute of the performance just so that you can see how lifelike it really is. And I'll warn you in advance, it's rap. There's a lot of swear words. So I'll warn you in advance. But just to show you, it's pretty cool. That's Tupac. And coming on stage live in person is Snoop Dogg.
That's what the fuck I'm talking about.
Hey, yo, Pop, let these motherfuckers know what kind of party they in right now.
Ain't nothing but a gangsta party.
Oh, shit. Come on, y'all.
You'd have put two of America's most wanted in the same motherfucking place at the same motherfucking time. Y'all niggas about to feel this. Break out the champagne glasses and motherfucking condoms. Have one on us.
Kick that shit, nephew.
Picture perfect. I paint a perfect picture. Bomb the hoochies with precision. My intentions to get with you with that and double.
Okay, you get the idea. I could watch it all day. I'm a super Snoop Dogg fan, so I love it. So as you can see, the tools are super cool, but it's not about the tools. The tools just enable communication. And what we're trying to do with all these tools is we're trying to create presence. Because we want to feel like we're working online as if we're in the office together. And in order to do that, we need to feel like our colleagues are present. And so that's what these tools are trying to create. Whether you're using the Kubi or Facebook Portal or Zoom or a good tool, what you're trying to do is make it easy. Picard to Riker, that's what we want. And with the technology that exists today, it's absolutely possible to do that. We just need to pay a little bit more attention to how we're doing it. I have a list of tools on my website. There's about 400 of them there, and I add to them almost every single day. So definitely take a look at that. Okay, so you came here because you wanted to learn how successful Agile or how distributed Agile teams are successful and how they're making it work. And the way that they're doing it is by making communicating easy, by defining what normal behavior is on the team, and by working out loud and making your work visible to your colleagues and creating presence on your teams. Again, there is no one right way to do it. It really is a series of experimenting with the various tools. You know, I created a wiki once for my team, and it was a beautiful work of art. It had a beautiful table of contents. It linked to everything that everybody needed, and nobody on the team used it. So yeah, it was a work of art. I still stand by it, but if people on your team don't use it, it's not the perfect tool. So maybe you're just taking pictures of your sticky notes. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you is the right tool for your team. It's just a matter of experimenting and seeing what happens. Okay, now to end, I want to end with one more poll, and I think it's important to think back as to what you've seen and decide what would you like to try on your team. So here's a list of options of all the things you want to try on your team, and I'm just curious what struck a note today. So to enhance your virtual team experience, looks like people want to invest in better equipment. Great, Chuck Skype for Business. Upgrade your internet connection, I'm not sure how that is. Using video, creating a team agreement with your team, working out loud, or trying a virtual office or telepresence or virtual reality of some sort. Looks like team agreement. It's pretty interesting. Most of the companies that I go to, I'd say 95% of the teams that I work with don't have a team agreement in place, and it's super easy to do and very effective. Great. Investing in better equipment, always good. I mean, a headset like this, I forgot to show it, a headset like this, it costs about, I don't know what it is in zlotys, it's about 50 euros, 60 euros, and it's great. You know, there's no wires connecting you to anything, noise canceling microphone. For if you're working in an open office, something like this is awesome. Way better than the iPhone pods, which the cord bangs, and again, we want it to be super clear communication, so easy to do. Looks like a lot of team agreement people. If you go to my website, I've got some free templates for creating team agreements, so you don't have to do it alone, and I hope you'll use that. That's all for today. I hope I've given some good tips and tools to help you on your remote teams, and I'll be here for the rest of the day. Thanks so much, everybody.